lesson for today. So remember last time we talked about how the temple was finally built and they had finally finished building the temple. And even though it wasn't as beautiful and magnificent as the one before, it was still a temple that they had built, and they were still so happy that finally the temple was built. So they celebrated and they started having the Passover festivals there, and everyone was happy, and that is where they went to worship God. Now, let's see what happens next.
So Nehemiah was one of the many Jews that remained in Babylon. Remember, many Jews remained in Babylon and there was a small group that set out. So out of the people who remained was Nehemiah. And Nehemiah had a very important job. And this job was to be the emperor's wine taster.
Yes.
And this emperor was called
Emperor Artaxerxes.
So it was an important job because the wine taster had to be someone that could be trusted completely. And now a Jew came and he had a message for Nehemiah, and he told Nehemiah, things are bad and there are no walls back in Jerusalem, there is nothing, and we are being disturbed by our enemies. Remember, the enemies are the Samaritans who did not want the temple to be built.
So when Nehemiah heard about this, he got very sad. And when the visitor left, Nehemiah became depressed. So he went to God and he prayed. And he said, "Oh God, I know that we have disappointed you and we have disobeyed you and we do not deserve your kindness. But please, please, please help us because we want to turn back to you." And he asked God, "Please soften the heart of the emperor so that when I go and tell him about this and ask him for permission to go home, his heart will be soft and he will be willing to hear me." So for 4 months, Nehemiah prayed and Nehemiah waited. And finally, one day when Nehemiah was serving wine to the king looked at Nehemiah and he said, "Nehemiah, what is wrong with you? You're not sick, but you look so miserable." And Nehemiah decided he was going to answer the king. But before he did that, he prayed, because no servant was supposed to be allowed to talk to the king about their feelings. They weren't supposed to tell the king that, but Nehemiah prayed to God and decided he would take the risk and he would tell the king what is wrong with him. So after he prayed, he told the king, my people are suffering. Will you please allow me to go and help my people?" And the king asked, "How long will you take?" But Nehemiah had planned for all of this.
So Nehemiah had a perfect plan, and for all the questions the king asked, Nehemiah had answers. Because remember, he had been praying, he had been asking God to help him. So he had answers when he was asked. And the king told him, "Fine, you can go." And Nehemiah told the king, "Please, can you give me timber from the royal forest to go and help us build?" And the king agreed, and Nehemiah was given timber. And he was also given a guard from the emperor to go with him so that he could not be disturbed by the enemies. And above that, the emperor gave him a pass, so that when he was going, he could not be stopped on the way by the enemies. And Nehemiah set out and he went to Jerusalem.
So children, from the story of Nehemiah asking the king for permission to go home, we learn that sometimes we might feel very, very sad about things and we might feel very, very bad about things. But we should always go to God and pray so that he can help us find a solution for our problem or help us stop anything that is making us feel sad. We also learn that sometimes when we feel sad and when we feel bad, we might not want to tell anyone because we're scared or we're ashamed or we just don't feel like it. But just like Nehemiah, we should ask God for the courage to tell people what is making us sad so we can find a solution. So now it's time for us to sing our song. So everyone stand up and help us sing this song. Okay. Okay, kids, it's time for us to sing our song. Now, we just talked about how Nehemiah was sad and how he prayed to God to soften the emperor's heart, and God softened the emperor's heart, and Nehemiah was allowed to go back to Jerusalem to help his people, and then he became happy. So now we are gonna sing a song about how we have the joy of the Lord in our hearts. So friends, stand up and help us sing this song. I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Down in my heart, down in my heart. I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Down in my heart to stay. And I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. And I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. I've got the peace that passes understanding down in my heart. Down in my heart, down in my heart. I've got the peace that passes understanding down in my heart. Down in my heart to stay. And I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. And I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. Got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Down in my heart, down in my heart. I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Down in my heart to stay. And I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. And I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. Yeah! Okay, kids, it's time for us to do our craft. Now, we've just talked about Nehemiah and how Nehemiah was the wine steward for the emperor, and how it was such an important job, and he had to be very, very trusted to make sure that the king's wine was not poisoned. And we talked about how Nehemiah found out about what was happening in Jerusalem and how it made him really sad. So to remember this story and our lesson for today, we are going to make a wine glass. And whenever we look at this wine glass, our wine glass will be written Nehemiah chapter 1 to chapter 2, which is where we find the story of Nehemiah. And whenever we go back to our Bibles and we read this story, we can remember that even though Nehemiah was sad and he didn't feel like talking to anyone, he was afraid of telling the emperor what was making him sad, he prayed to God, and God gave him the strength to speak to the emperor, and in the end, the emperor ended up giving him more than even he had asked for, he had hoped for, exactly what he had hoped for. So, let's start our craft. First thing we need to do is we need to draw a wine glass. So I have an outline of a wine glass, and I'm just going to make it darker. First thing we need to do is we need to draw our wine glass. So one line at the top, and then a curved line. Leading to the center. Same thing on the other side. And then straight line leading to the bottom. Same on the other side. And then we'll finish it off with a small semicircle base. Okay, so this is our wine glass. Now you can decorate this wine glass however you want. So just take your colors and just decorate the wine glass however you want. Okay, so after decorating our wine glasses, we are going to write where we find this story from, and that is Nehemiah chapter 1 and chapter 2. So whenever we look at this wine glass, we know what story we are going to read in the Bible. So at the center of your wine glass, I want you to write in big capital letters, Nehemiah chapter 1 to chapter 2. So now whenever we look at this wine glass, we'll remember what story we need to read, and that's in Nehemiah chapter 1 and chapter 2. And we'll remember about how trusted Nehemiah was and how he prayed to God and asked God to help him. Now, the last thing we're going to do is we're going to cut out this wine glass. So take your scissors and just very carefully cut along the outline so that we only have the wine glass. Okay, and there we go. We have our craft, our wine glass. So whenever we look at it, we remember the story in Nehemiah chapter 1 to chapter 2, the story about Nehemiah and how he served the king, and how when he heard about what was going on in his hometown, he did everything he could. He prayed to God and he talked to the emperor, and he was finally allowed to return home. So next time we'll see what continues to happen to Nehemiah. But this has been our craft for today, and that has been our lesson for today. So we'll see you next time. Bye!